You're going to want to take this down. Well, Daphne, thank you for joining me on Take This Down. It's a privilege and honor to have you on the show, and I can't thank you enough for being here with me today.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Ty. It's a real privilege.
Thank you. Well, one thing I like to start off every episode is telling my guests why I invited them on the show. You and I met whenever we met a few years back, but we were both working in different capacities in the Las Vegas Trail community. Mm-hmm. Me as a board member for LVT Rise, obviously you in your capacity with the Boys and Girls Club. And I just got to see your leadership style and ultimately was able to join the Boys and Girls Club board and being a alum of Boys and Girls Club. It's something that's always near and dear to my heart, but seeing everything that you do and how you do it efficiently, flawlessly, it was always something that stood up. And you were immediately one of the people that came to mind. I wanted to have a conversation with you to, one, let the world know who you are behind the engine that is the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tarrant County and how you got to where you are today. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna remember those words and replay them in my head, especially gonna repeat them to my kids, especially the part about being flawless.
So let's kind of just jump right into it.
Sure.
So who is Daphne at her core?
Oh, gosh. I think I've always been a dreamer, Ty. I think back to the time when I was 12 and 13, thinking about the person I wanted to become. I think I've always been the kind of person who wanted to change the world, which sounds kind of big and lofty, but it's definitely the kind of person I am at my core, at my heart. I really do believe people change the world. And I believe especially that together we can change the world for good. And so I've really tried to live my life the way that feels, honest to that belief. And I also believe in going big, whenever possible, to have a dream that inspires, first of all, me, and also inspires other people to follow that dream as well. I've been really, really blessed in my life to have opportunities and people around me that have allowed me to pursue a lot of those dreams. And so I guess I'm a dreamer a little bit, and I really enjoy the opportunity of being able to pursue those dreams.
Growing up, did you always have dreams, or did you know what you wanted to do, or how was it growing up for you?
I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and had an amazing educational experience. And I credit my educational experience at Carver Middle School and Booker T. Washington High School as being foundational to how I see the world today, and really being key to helping me develop into the person that I hope I'm helping my own children grow into. Tulsa is a great community. It really provided me a lot of opportunities, but it also has an interesting past, has a challenged past. And I was really fortunate to attend Booker T. Washington High School because it was one of the first integrated high schools in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And actually, it was in the 70s, it was integrated. And it's also a magnet school. It was a really fantastic academic public education for me. It gave me the opportunity to learn history in a more balanced way, I think. It gave me exposure to a wider variety of cultures and experiences. It was in a different part of town than where I lived. And I really value the opportunity to have been around people that looked different than me, that came from different experiences than I had had growing up. And I believe strongly that educational experience was a big part of helping form the decisions I made as a young person. At least half of my teachers were not white. By the time I was in sixth grade, I had a lot of exposure to a lot of different histories of Tulsa, of Oklahoma, and of our nation. And I think that in particular today, that's something that we're struggling with, is to make sure that history represents as many people and all people as possible more accurately. And that's one thing I'm really grateful for, is I had such a great educational experience in Tulsa.
If my own personal history is correct regarding Tulsa, Booker T. Washington, is that not situated in what was known as Black Wall Street in Tulsa?
Yeah. So I took a bus from another part of town every day, and I was starting at the age of 12, and I drove past Greenwood and what people sometimes refer to as Black Wall Street, and I every day would pass that on the way to school, and it was a good opportunity for me to be reminded of what is the reality that a lot of people lived in Tulsa through the 20s, 30s, 40s, have still lived. And so it's situated in a part of town that I think provided me a different lens to look at the world and to grow up thinking about the world in a different sort of way. And I'm really grateful for that.
Gotcha. And to all the listeners and audience out there, this is where I tell you, if you don't know anything about the history of Greenwood, Tulsa, or Black Wall Street, this is your opportunity to Google and do some additional research. But one thing that you said that I think is very key is you said you had a balanced education and experience growing up. How was that, significant, or how did that help you, move or progress through life?
Well, I think it did a couple of different things. It has, you don't know something's different as a kid or as a teenager until you experience something that's not what you're used to. And, college is a great opportunity for you to experience those new things, or when you go other places. And I always thought that, the experiences I had were normal. And then as I got older, I realized it wasn't completely normal. Right. Maybe to have what I thought was maybe a more integrated experience with other cultures and different people, and realize that, I maybe was experiencing something that, well, frankly, was better, but wasn't what the same experience that other people had. And so that helped me understand that I had a unique perspective, and that it was something I could actually challenge myself. So I actually went to Africa when I was in college. It was kind of probably a step I would not have taken had I not had that beginning the way I did. And I worked when I was in college at a lot of people don't know this about me, actually. I worked in college at an HIV-positive orphanage. This was an orphanage for HIV-positive orphans. And it was such a transformational experience for me. I was 19. And when I arrived there, it was just such a different environment, but such a great environment. People were so happy and so grateful for what they had. It taught me another lesson. So sort of my upbringing kind of got me to the point where I was willing to do something like that. And then once I was there, that experience taught me a lot more about what mattered to me as a person and the kinds of things that I wanted to continue to do with my life and even my career. I remember coming back to the States and thinking, I cannot and I don't want to stop thinking about what's possible for our community here. Gotcha. And it really inspired me to think big as much as possible.
So I imagine at 19 years old, moving to Africa, working at an HIV-positive orphanage, your parents supported you 100%.
No, not at all. I went there against their will. They actually told me not to go. I think I have kids, that are that age now, and I think, I'd be so angry if they did what I did. The day I arrived, I saw, I was in Johannesburg, and we arrived, and I saw two people actually come out of court down the steps, and they actually shot each other. They didn't like the outcome of the verdict, and that was my first day of arrival. And so it was also those moments where you grow up a little bit and you realize that our justice system doesn't work the same way everywhere in the world, and it also, just from a safety and security standpoint, I realized that I had some things to learn as a young person. My parents didn't necessarily support me going there, but it also was just part of my growing up as a person, growing up as a leader, deciding what was good for me and how I would move as a woman.
So with your parents, essentially, I'm going to say not originally wanting or supporting your decision, and then you arrive, and this is the first thing that you see. Yeah. Do you have this oh no, I made a mistake moment, or Like, did you continue to believe, no, this is my purpose, this is the path that I'm supposed to be on at this point?
For better or worse, Ty, I'm a pretty stubborn person. Depending on what side of the coin you find me on, I'm a pretty committed person once I get my mind set on something. And I really felt needed there. I felt like it was the place I needed to be at the moment. And it was.
Was you ever, and I say this not by no means trying to date you or anything like that, but, at that particular point, the world really doesn't know much about HIV or AIDS or anything like that. Did you ever fear for like your own personal health or exposure or anything?
I went on later to get a graduate degree in public health. So I'm certified in public health. It actually really did prompt me to think about those things. I didn't worry about it. This was early on. This was right after apartheid ended in South Africa. This was in South Africa. And it was the first year after apartheid ended. So it's also a really interesting time in the history of that country. Incidentally, I got to meet Nelson Mandela when I was there, which was such an incredible experience. And one that I have come to appreciate more over time. Because when you're young, you don't always appreciate things the same way. And I think I didn't know to be as afraid of maybe the things I should have, but I wasn't really afraid. I understood how that worked. But it was, we've grown as a society to understand more about that disease and more about how it's transmitted. And we've come up with much better response to it, medically speaking.
Right. I'm going to tell you a quick story, but my Nelson Mandela story. I never met Nelson Mandela or anything like that, but I heard about him so much in my household because my older sister and Nelson Mandela shared the same birthday, July 18th. Okay. And so anytime there was a time for her to do a report or a biography on someone, she always picked Nelson.
Like, that's who I'm
Nelson
doing.
Mandela. And so it was, I can tell you everything I don't want to know about Nelson Mandela that they share in books.
Yeah.
But that's good. And so now you have this experience, you're ready to head back to the States. You know what you want to do with the rest of your life. Right?
No, not at all. Gosh. I think we sometimes like to make our kids think like we knew what we were doing, but we don't. No, I feel like again, a dreamer. I kind of knew that I wanted to do something meaningful with my life, but I wasn't quite sure, how that would really play out. I was in college, so I needed to get my degree, and so I actually got a degree in microbiology.
I see you're using it a lot.
I put on my lab coat every day. In microbiology, and so I think at that time in my life, I spent a lot of time, volunteering and working at my church and doing things like that kind of brought me a lot of meaning. And it really wasn't until I graduated and got to Fort Worth and found the Boys and Girls Club that things kind of came together for me, though, and helped me to understand more about how to contribute my talents to the community. And so that's really where I felt things coalesce for me and come together.
I know, and maybe you mentioned it. Where did you do your undergrad back in Oklahoma?
Oklahoma State, yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's funny. I always wanted to go to Oklahoma State, but that's a story for another day. So do you think that did you have aspirations of becoming a medical doctor?
I thought maybe I could be a physician. I still think I'd make a good doctor. And I really did love microbiology, still do. And I still read quite a bit about it. I am fascinated about that field. But I did think I might become a doctor.
Do you think that desire, came from one, your love for wanting to help people in the community, and who impacts the community more per se than physicians and things like that? Do you think that was some type of correlation or just a general interest? Yeah,
I think, and this kind of goes maybe a little bit to what I noticed at Boys and Girls Club too. I think a lot of times when you're a young person, you identify with careers of adults that you see most often, and you see doctors when you're a kid.
Right.
And it was a profession that I could understand was doing good, and it was something I identified with, and so I related to a doctor and the good that a doctor could do. And I think that I identified with it, and I did well in science. That was something I thought, and I thought people who did well in science were smart. So, I had to do all of that.
Right.
And so I think that it kind of made a lot of sense to me that it might be something I'd be good at.
Gotcha. And so growing up in Tulsa, South Africa, college in Stillwater, Oklahoma, coming to Fort Worth was a walk in the park, I bet, for you.
Well, a lot of similarities between Tulsa and Fort Worth, but some differences too. And I think a lot of people think that Oklahoma, so close to Texas, it's the same place pretty much. I did notice some differences. And plus, I was growing as a person. I was growing up, and was really not sure of Fort Worth when we moved here. I didn't know what to expect, didn't know what kind of place it was going to be. And I went to work using my microbiology degree right away. Worked in a forensics lab.
Okay.
It was kind of interesting. That's right when CSI came out, and so I thought it'd be really, really cool. But it was actually pretty pretty basic every day.
Right.
We would test things over and over again, and then decided I was going to go back to school actually, and go back to school for public health. And I went to UNT Health Science Center and got my degree in public health, and really enjoyed that experience. And enjoyed Fort Worth. That's where kind of the period of time in my life where I was learning about our city and learning about, how things worked here. When you move to a new place, you don't really know.
Right.
You don't know people. You don't know institutions. You don't even know where to go grocery shopping. And so I was spending that time really kind of getting to know everybody. And that's when I found I volunteered first at Boys and Girls Club during that time.
Gosh. And I was going to ask, because you seem to have always have this tie of community and wanting to help.
Mm-hmm.
How did you connect to the community in Fort Worth, when you moved here, working for a forensic lab and then transitioning to pursuing your public health? How did you go about finding some sense of community?
Yeah. It was through church first. I knew people from church when we moved, and it kind of just, it kind of helped me get connected. And somebody asked me to contribute my time at the holidays. And I've kind of had, it's a strength and a weakness. I say yes most of the time when somebody asks me to do something. Sometimes I say yes too much, but
I can relate.
Yeah. But I said yes, and I think that's a good piece of advice for somebody too that's young, that might be just trying to figure out how to fit into a community or fit into a new situation. Sometimes you have to say yes to things you're not sure about. And I did say yes to a lot of things back then, just to kind of learn people, learn, kind of learn my community. And that's what I was doing then, is just, so I got connected initially through church, and then got to know one person who introduced me to another person, and just kind of grew my network of people that I knew. And, I was young. I was 22, 23, and you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so, just slowly began to know the things that I needed to know at that age. And also just to grow my career, grow my education, grow my own personal network, and also decide more about myself, what was important to me and what I wanted to do next.
You said something that I think is important to kind of highlight. You say yes, saying yes. I think, you say yes in order to know when to say no. Mm-hmm. I think if you never say yes to things, you'll never know when, okay, this is where I have to say no. Do you think because you said yes so much early on, it helped you filter when it was time, okay, no, this is not for me?
That's a really good point. I haven't always thought about it that way, but it's kind of like when you're, okay, I'll use a quick analogy. I don't know if you like to go to the beach, but you get in the water and you get a little farther away from the sand,
right,
and you get a little bit deeper into the water. At some point you realize you've gone far enough,
but
you don't realize you get there until you get there. And I do think it's a little bit that way with new situations, people, causes even. Okay, I tried it and I loved it. Or I tried it and that didn't quite go the way I thought it was going to go. Or I tried that job, or I tried that activity, or that whatever, fill in the blank. I think you do learn by experience a lot of times. And you can't figure out what you like or don't like until you do it.
Right.
And I notice in young people, sometimes there is a hesitation to try something because we kind of self-edit and say, oh, I won't like that, therefore I won't try that. Or I won't be good at that, therefore I won't try that. Or, maybe I won't be, successful, or they won't like me enough if I do or don't do that. And so we don't try. And so I think there is a hesitancy sometimes to just put yourself out there, and it is a challenge to overcome that. But I do think in my life that's something that's been really helpful to me. I've not been successful at everything I've tried, and being successful has been great, but being unsuccessful or maybe even not liking some of the things I've tried has been good for me because it's helped me understand what I don't want to keep doing.
Gotcha. I'm going to probably jump ahead and come back because you said something that sparks me. You work with our youth a lot, day to day, and in various capacities. You see them at different stages and different vulnerability. Do you feel that sometimes that our youth or the generations that's continue to grow up and they're scared to fail, so they're not taking risk?
I definitely think that is a challenge, especially for the age group that maybe has been impacted by the pandemic.
Right.
And I think there is an intimidation of failure and an intimidation of being accepted that causes this particular group of young people. So this would be I see this more in teens today, that does cause them to maybe be afraid to take as many risks. So maybe because there was more isolation at a period that was really important to their development cycle, the time that they would be normally forming natural bonds and connections with other people. Right. They were not able to do that as much. And so that confidence that we all build by getting to know somebody for the first time, or maybe, we all experience some rejection a little bit, right? Even in meeting new people as adults, there's a little bit of that, right? And so as a teenager, as a young adolescent, that's something that you're doing on a regular basis. And during COVID, I think that was a hard thing to do. And doing it online and through social media is not the same thing.
Right. And, and again, I don't know how I got on this tangent, but, I would be curious if there's anyone that's out there that's doing case studies of, students that went from sixth grade, and next thing you know, after the pandemic, they're in high school because they never got that kind of true middle school to where you can transition to be the older kid in school. And now you're plopped in high school with 18, 17-year-olds, but you never got that interaction. I can only imagine what that experience may be for them. Because, middle school, I would say, helped me, start to find my voice a little bit. And, but I don't know, you mentioned, being willing and not afraid to fail. And it may kind of just naturally took me there. So
I think you're exactly right, Ty. We're actually partnering with Texas A&M. They have been doing a couple of different studies. And so we'll be working with them next year to do a study on the impact of teens' willingness and ability to interact with other teens in person and online based on their participation in extracurricular activities, and specifically their participation in Boys and Girls Club. So this will test your idea.
Gotcha.
I'll just let you know how it goes.
See, that wasn't even set up that way, but that's good to know. Yeah. And so we mentioned it, but how did you end up at Boys and Girls Club?
Okay, so I volunteered, which is like an advertisement for volunteering. You don't.
If you volunteer, you could come see you one day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my first paid job was answering the phone. That's the other thing I tell people is you never know. So I did volunteer during the holiday season. I helped raise, gather gifts at the holiday season for one of our locations. And I remember the first time I walked in and I was like, there are a lot of kids here. And so if you ever do come to the club, we do a pretty good job of serving a lot of kids. And so it's a fantastic strength of our organization is we do really good at connecting. Yeah. But I remember the first time that I walked in, I was like, wow, there's a lot going on here. And so that was my first experience. And I was in graduate school. So like I mentioned, I was at UNT Health Science Center. So I was in graduate school and I started doing just some hourly jobs, answering the phone, doing data entry, just doing a couple different things. And that kind of morphed over time. And eventually, after I got my degree, I thought, okay, I've got a microbiology degree and I'm a public health professional. I'm about ready to go fight Ebola or some like really big like
SARS.
Yeah, this is before COVID, but I thought I'm ready, And I really did think I was going to do some kind of I kind of thought that's where I was headed, and then I got a call from Boys and Girls Club about a position, and I thought, I'm going to do that, and had the opportunity to interview and get offered the position. And over time, I came to understand a couple of things about myself. It was a perfect marriage of that dreamer in me. So thinking back to that service that you've asked me questions about, the opportunity to serve, the opportunity to connect, the things in my past that had really made me feel whole, along with this opportunity to use my talents and gifts. So I'd learned a lot in college about how to think and contribute. And college is about a lot more than the actual content.
Right.
A lot of times it's about how to think and how to make decisions and how to communicate. I saw where I could bring my talents and gifts to really an amazing organization. And it over time, I really started to feel like the things that had happened in my life were really positioning for me an opportunity to serve a community that I'd fallen in love with. And it didn't happen immediately. It wasn't like this, the skies parted and a ray of sunshine came down and said, this is where you are meant to be. It happened over time. And I think sometimes young people feel like they're just waiting for the scroll to come down and say, this is your purpose in life. It doesn't happen that way. And it didn't happen that way for me. It developed over a longer period of time through a longer set of circumstances where I started to feel like I was making a difference in the way that I wanted to. And I did. I found my home.
Do you feel that because you had the experiences, not only with your background, but, the route that you took equipped you to be prepared for what you take on day to day with Boys and Girls Club?
Most of the time. I would like to think that I'm still growing and still learning new skills that keep me challenged for learning new things, but in a lot of ways, yes. So when I think about going into new situations, like I mentioned, even the way I was educated as a teenager, or going into Africa, or those decisions, moving to Fort Worth without really a whole big plan, those situations taught me how to face a lot of the challenges I see day to day leading a large organization. We have a lot of locations. We serve a lot of kids every single day, every single year. And there are challenges that come up with that kind of work. And I don't always know what those challenges are going to be. And they're usually, some of them are easy decisions, but I would say a lot of them are complex decisions. Like, how are we going to have enough money to answer this incredibly difficult challenge? How are we going to manage our resources effectively? Those are things that that require skills that I started to learn at a young age, and that over time I got better and better at. And those experiences did prepare me for it, but not in a straight line. They were things that I'm 47, so
I didn't ask.
I don't think I'm old. Yeah, you didn't ask. I don't think I'm old yet, but I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm starting to have a little bit of line of sight back, and I'm starting to understand how those experiences did help prepare me for the things that I face today.
And so, as you are climbing the Boys and Girls Club corporate ladder and you ultimately become, CEO and president, did you feel prepared?
No. I mean, I don't think any of us really feel prepared for important things.
So how did you go about, one, amping yourself up to telling yourself that you're prepared and ready for it, but also kind of fighting maybe imposter syndrome, or oh, I have this seat, I'm now have this title, I have this responsibility. What am I going to do now?
Yeah, so I don't think it happened immediately. I remember, so I live kind of in the north part of Fort Worth, and there's this part where I would drive into work on 35, and you turn, you get on the highway, and as you come down, it's this great view of downtown Fort Worth. And I remember kind of early on when I was in the position, I would see downtown and I would just, this weight would come on my shoulders like, man, I have so much responsibility. Like I have to take care of all these kids, make sure I do a good job. And I just remember feeling that weight in the role. And I think all of us that kind of have had that experience of going to the next level, like whatever the next level is, you kind of feel that weight for a while. And it's that adjustment period where you're trying to reconcile the responsibility that's very real. And also, figuring out how to manage performance to that responsibility, and also figuring out how to be not comfortable in it, but feeling prepared, feeling like you have the skills needed to answer the call for the work. And I do remember early on feeling like, wow, this is a lot. There's a lot of responsibility. If I make a mistake, we might not serve as many kids that need us. And I still feel that pressure. I think what's helped me over time is to be honest when I do make a mistake with myself first, and then with somebody else I trust. To say, hey, I'm not feeling like things are going well here, and getting somebody to help me through that, and then change it. And imposter syndrome is a great question, because I think it happens to a lot of people in different ways. And I became CEO in my early 30s. I think I was 31 when I became a CEO. I had just had my third baby. I think she was not even a year old yet. And so I was a very young mother and had a lot of responsibility. And I felt the need to do well at all of that. And so, I think for a period of time, you're kind of racing against yourself to do a really good job. And I still am. But I think there is a point in time where you start to realize, okay, you know what, I did good at that. I did good at that. And I can acknowledge that I did good at that. Or, that was not your best moment, Daphne. Let's not do that again. Let's get you a better resource. Let's make sure this or that happens differently. And that honesty with yourself is extremely important to make sure that you grow as a person, so that you are feeling like you're showing up as your authentic self more and more every day.
That's good. That's good. Along that journey, was there a person or mentor, or even a book or anything that you would go for reference, or, seek for that advice that would help you along the way?
Yeah, I listen to books on Audible a lot. I find that fits me really well. So I've read or listened to a lot of different ones. But I will say the things that probably have helped me the most have been my colleagues who run other boys and girls clubs that I respect a lot. I think that has been the biggest impact to me, is to be able to seek out my colleagues that I think do a really good job in my same job, but in a different market. So I have a colleague, I consider her my friend too, that I go to. She runs, so our organization's here in terms of size, and hers is just a little bit bigger. So we are the biggest Boys and Girls Club in Texas, which, I like to say. Right. So we're a really big organization, but, hers is a little bit bigger. And it helps me to go to her and compare, and also to not compete, but compare, and also kind of hear. And she's a little bit older than me, so she's been in the workforce and in her position longer. And so it helps me kind of get that mentorship that I need, and we kind of work out problems for each other and together. That it helps me not feel alone. So I think sometimes as a leader, it's easy to feel alone, and there's just things sometimes you need to talk through. And I really value my colleagues and my peers when I can rely on them to help me, give me honest feedback, give me the opportunity to work through a problem. And over my career, that's been something I've been very blessed. Our board has supported me deeply in those opportunities to seek out those kinds of relationships.
So you took over Boys and Girls Club, when you're 31. You're very young, but you're still very young. And, do you remember the size of the club then? And then, love to, allow you to brag upon yourself to what it's grown to today.
Okay, so it was $5.5 million in operating. And that was in 2006. And we approved our budget for this year at 15.5 in operating. Oh. So I guess that's a three times growth, which is phenomenal. And the reason it's phenomenal is that translates directly into the number of young people that we can impact and serve. And that's the kind of work you want to see happening right here in your local community. You want to say, hey, in the last 18 years, 17 years, we've seen 3 times as many kids get served. Right. And when I think back, when I said I was a dreamer, that's the kind of story I want to tell myself. It's the kind of life I want to leave my children, a legacy of, to know about me as a mom. And ultimately, hands down, it's the result I want to produce for the people around me. And, you're right. I'm 47. I still got some gas in this tank. You know what I mean? Right. Like, where can we go from here in the next few years? Where can we go? And we need to serve more kids. In our estimation, we're only serving anywhere between 5 and 7% of the target demographic that, these are kids maybe on free or reduced lunch. Only 5 to 7% of the kids who need us in this county, in Tarrant County. And so that's not enough just to keep up with the number of people that are moving into our county, just to keep up with that, just to keep up with 5 to 7%, depending on how you measure it, we've got to continue to grow over time. And these are the things that I think about, that motivate me, that I know other people think about too. And these are the things that I very much want to accomplish in my career.
Well, I was going to ask, how do you stay motivated, because everything that you've been able to accomplish under your tent, it's easy to sit back and be like, oh, I've done enough, I can go down and always be remembered. But it's still that hunger, that's still that drive. Is because there's still a need out there? So when I think about, remember I told you I was coming back from Africa, and I came back to the States, and I remember distinctly coming back, and I remember feeling this feeling when I came back, I have to help people around me understand what's possible. I don't know why, but that experience did really inspire me to be a leader and to be a visionary and to help other people accomplish things. And I feel like that is still in my DNA. Everybody together makes things better. And we collectively can make our community better. I think right now we're in a period of time where there can be some divisiveness in our world and between leaders even in our world. And we can make it better. The kids we serve, the youth of our community, are the solution. And I believe completely in that. And I believe in our ability to create their future, to level their ground as much as possible so they have the opportunity to be their very best. And that motivates me. It motivated me when I was younger. It's still in there. Right. And I hope it's in there as long as possible. If I start not to do a good job or that fire goes away from me, I need to step away from the work. Right. And so, you see some of, our talented, children, our talented students that's in our communities. What do you think are some of the issues that are facing them or that's hindering them from reaching their full potential?
Yeah. So we take time to actually ask this question at Boys and Girls Club. We intentionally seek out that feedback. We ask every one of our young people to give us the feedback in a couple of different ways. We have pulse surveys where we're asking them like about their daily experience, and then we do a very intentional once a year annual survey where we ask about their satisfaction with their experience at Boys and Girls Club. But then we also we huddle up and we talk it out. And we've been doing this recently. We do a spring kind of a set of what I would call our focus groups with our teens. And so we very recently have this information. It's a good question.
Gotcha.
And I would say two things have resonated in our focus groups recently. One, young people are not as distracted by all this noise that us adults are. Like I don't know about you, but man, I turn on my news and I'm like, man, there's a lot going on.
Right.
Teens, they got it down pretty simple. I thought maybe I'd hear a lot of that same noise coming from them. Mm-mm. They want to make sure they're included and the people around them feel included.
Right.
They want to be in an environment that creates a good community vibe that gives them the opportunity to be included and include other people. That is the number one piece of feedback we've been hearing from them. And they feel an obligation to create that for each other, which I love.
Right.
They're not passing the buck to adults this or that, but they do really want to be accepted for who they are. The other thing that we're hearing a lot of feedback on is workforce. There's a lot of conversation around who they want to become. And it has a lot to do with how I'm going to make money. It's not a straight line. Like I was talking about being a doctor. It's some of that, but
right.
It's also like, man, I think maybe I want to do this music thing, or maybe I want to try out my own company. Like I'll be an entrepreneur, or maybe I want to do this over here. Maybe I want to not do a job that requires college, but maybe I want to be like a chiropractor, or maybe I want to do something else in the culinary arts. And so we're getting a lot of feedback from our teens that it is on their mind about how they're gonna basically show up in the workforce. And I love that. I think sometimes, not everybody, I think sometimes society gives teens a bad rap, that they're not thinking about their future. I think it's exactly the opposite. I think a lot of times teens very much care about each other, about themselves and their future. They need the opportunity to be put in an environment where these are the things that get fostered in them and grown.
It's interesting that you say that, because as you were giving me that, I was wondering, does that make them grow up too fast, that they're already so focused on what they want to do rather than, enjoying, the adolescence or things of that nature? What's your thoughts?
That's a really good question. I think we've been doing that it's been accelerating, I think, in our society over the last many years. I don't know about you, but when you go to a social function, what's the first question people ask you after?
So what do you do?
Exactly. I think this has been happening for a while. Like, I think we put a lot of emphasis in our culture around profession. We put value around what people produce.
100%.
And let's face it, it's how we make money too. And so if I'm a young person and I've watched the pandemic recently, and I've watched maybe maybe I don't call it inflation, but I watch, things like the cost of rent going up or other things. Money is on my mind, you know what I mean? And how am I going to make it? I don't think that it's an inappropriate thing for them to be thinking about. I think it's just a realistic question.
Do you think that translates because of maybe the circumstances that they're in and the cards that they're dealt? It's like, hey, their home may be one way, and they're trying to think of ways to change their circumstances for maybe not only themselves but for their family.
Yeah, there's some questions or lack of questions that are a privilege, right? If I could not have to worry about what's around the corner, that's a privilege.
Right.
Our purpose at Boys and Girls Club is to support all kids, but it's really focused around making sure that we serve the kids who need us the very most. And so we know that there are challenges around maybe economic security, educational attainment. These are things that are on their mind more in some ways. because they don't have the privilege of not having to worry about tomorrow.
Right. Probably when you and I both were growing up, this was probably something that wasn't discussed or talked about, is mental health of teenagers and kids. It's a topic that's now being discussed so much earlier. What are you all doing at the Boys and Girls Club to want to address mental health with the kids?
Yeah, a great question. It has changed, hasn't it? So having a trauma-informed lens is an important part of our approach to this question. What that means is that first asking what is going on that might be impacting the situation that we're encountering. So I think maybe in years gone by, and not just at Boys and Girls Club, but anywhere, we might look at a situation where there might be a behavior challenge and think, oh, there's something wrong with the kid. But a trauma-informed lens would say, there's a behavior, what might be causing that behavior? And taking a much deeper, more informed approach to understanding the total situation and addressing the behavior, but also trying to figure out how to address the situation, the circumstances, the other things that are going on in the child's life that ultimately are causing this behavior. Because the behavior is often just the warning sign that there is trauma. And so having a trauma-informed approach to how we just do our work is an important way in which we are prioritizing mental health in general. But specifically, in addition to that, we've been really blessed to have resources, some of which come from the state and some of which we can get locally and through private donations as well, that allow for us to have mental health professionals working with us. That kind of give us that immediate, help us meet immediate and urgent problems, but also help us do classes and groups and sessions that help our young people maybe cope with some of their challenges. We've also tried to be creative. So we've worked with Nanda Yoga that's come in and helped. They're great because it's yoga, but it's yoga done by mental health professionals. And so they're using mindfulness techniques with like 6 and 7 year olds. There's nothing like walking into I talked about walking into Boys and Girls Club thinking, there are a lot of kids here. There's nothing like walking into a gym and it's completely silent. And there's 60 kids on mats because they're having a mindfulness moment. It's so cool because it's also teaching them how to deal with maybe all the noise they're feeling on the inside. So using unique approaches to mental health awareness and coping mechanisms so that they can do a better job at any time in their life at managing some of their stressors. I think we need more though. Recently, I spent some time with our elected officials in trying to make the case that we need to get as many resources as possible to our kids, not just at Boys and Girls Club, but in lots of different ways to our kids because we need to support them more, not less.
Right. And well, first, namaste to that. And I would say everything that you described, when I was coming up through the Boys and Girls Club, it was, we rolled out the balls, played basketball. Yes. I would tell, you can ask anyone who went to college with me or even law school. I got my pool skills because of Boys and Girls Club. And so, but I love hearing, some of the how can I say, more well-rounded programming that you are offering the students. Have you seen that translate to them becoming more well-rounded individuals?
Yeah, I think so. Let's also say that it's also a parent education opportunity too. Right. So, when let's say we encounter a challenge with a child or children, it's a great opportunity for us to be able to insert all these resources to be able to say, hey, let's some alternative behaviors that we're looking for, or maybe counseling services that are needed, or parent education around, maybe ways for us to support the whole family. Those are moments when you see like, okay, this is going to get a different result as opposed to the result that we just saw. And I think families are struggling. Families need more support, not less. When something doesn't go as planned, it's not because anybody woke up that morning and said, we're going to make this a difficult day. Right. When things don't go as planned, it's because people generally are doing their best, but they need extra help and they need extra support. And that's where we can come in and help connect people with resources, provide the resources ourselves. And I think that's where we're going to see over time, a more rounded young person, the opportunity for them to know, hey, I can roll out the ball and have a great time in the gym, but I can also talk to that staff person about how I'm feeling about something, or maybe confide in someone else that I need a little bit more support at home.
So what would you say to, and I'm going to use this example, to the grumpy old man that says, oh, our children aren't the future. All they do is play on social media and TikTok, and they're not prepared for the workforce. You see, our youth more than anyone. What would you say to that grumpy old man?
Well, he or she probably hasn't spent very much time with young people. And I think again, media portrays us all in one way, including that grumpy old man. But I think young people are portrayed a certain way. And this is just completely opposite of my direct experience with them. I would encourage anybody who hasn't actually spent time with a young person to do that.
Right.
And have a meaningful conversation with a 15-year-old. And, you'll learn a lot about their viewpoints, and that's a good thing. Maybe ask some questions about what their hopes and dreams are for the future, what their concerns are. And I think you'll find that, like I find, we have a great future ahead of us so long as we do a good job of taking care of the blessing we have in our youth.
Gotcha. When I used to be a prosecutor, one thing that people would always ask me, do you get secondhand trauma being a prosecutor just based off everything that you're seeing, what I've been exposed to? Do you ever feel like, what you see with the trauma that some of the youth come in with, does that ever get transferred to you, or do you ever take that home and, make you want to hug your kids a little bit tighter or anything?
What an insightful question. I worry about this with our staff a lot. And I do think it's important to have a healthy set of boundaries, because it can be difficult sometimes to, we're mandatory reporters.
Right.
When something doesn't go right, sometimes we have to go get more help. And that's what that means. And so it can be hard sometimes. I think as a leader, it may be hard in a different way, because it gets aggregated up, all the things that maybe didn't go right that day or that week. And it can weigh on you. It can impact you. But it's important to also understand that those things would not have been known to you if not for the opportunity to serve. Sure. And I think that has refreshed my viewpoint many, many times. Like, I wouldn't have this knowledge, this information, the opportunity to serve if not for this moment. This child, this family would not have had the intervention. And that has helped me a lot. I will say, though, it's important to take a break. It's important to sleep. It's important to do all those things that all the smart people say we should do. Because if I've learned anything, that I am completely human in every way. And that means I get tired. I can get discouraged. I need friends. Those are all things I have to practice as a leader in order to make sure that I am refreshed and ready for the next thing ahead.
And this is a question, but might more so be a personal question that I want to ask you. How do you, acknowledge that you are a human and allow yourself to, okay, I need a break, Daphne, or Daphne, you need to take time away, because, in my own personal, professional growth and always feeling like I need to build, it's, no, I don't have time to rest. You don't have time to sleep. And, my wife tells me, hey, you need to go to sleep. It's 3 a.m. No, I don't have time to sleep. I sleep later. But how do you, get to the point to where you're comfortable, not only in your leadership, but knowing that I'm human, I need to take time?
Well, when you get to be 47, your body does it for you a little bit. There are some good books about this that started to impact the way I thought about staying up till 3 a.m. So I read a couple of those books that helped me. Like one's called Rest. That helped me think about just how important sleep was. Also, there's a lot of good research about sleep itself and how it impacts. For me, it's I notice things in my own personal health based on how well I'm getting rest. I think it's a little bit prideful, and I'm not directing this to you because it's really something I've noticed about myself too. Sometimes I'm so motivated sometimes to like, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do this, and it motivates me to do a lot of work. But there is a bit of pride that comes with thinking that I shouldn't take a break, that I am somehow above being human. And I really need to be humble with what I've been given and take care of it. We have one of our common behaviors at Boys and Girls Club is respect. It's respect all people. There's a period at the end of that. Respect all people, period. It's also respect all that we've been given. That could be property, that could be vehicles, but it's respect what we've been given. And I think that applies to ourselves as people as well.
That's good. And with that respect of what we've been given, do you feel that Tarrant County has given a lot to Boys and Girls Club, or is there still a need for Tarrant County to do more? And I say county as we as a community, not county as a municipality.
Yeah. So we are sitting in one of the most philanthropic communities in the nation. And we were founded in 1926. So we're the oldest Boys and Girls Club in the state. I always like to say that, And I think there is somewhat of a correlation to us also being the largest, because I think, the longer you're around, you should grow. You should get bigger.
Right.
But I think it's also important to note that we're sitting in a community that has foundations that have been here, philanthropic foundations that have been here for many, many years. Some of whose founders helped start our organization. It's just amazing. And philanthropic people who give. And it's not always about money. It's also about time. Like our culture, I think, and our community-wide culture is community-minded, right? About giving to others. So I do think we benefit from that. Do I think there's more to do? Yeah. I think there's a lot more to do. I don't think we've fully recognized and acted upon the inequities in our community in a way that has I don't think we've realized it to the extent that it's necessary for us to achieve results. And I think that's going to be going on for a while. And I think that needs to be honestly talked about more and more and more.
In a previous episode, I had Dr. Whitney Boyd with Braver together, and they're working on a lot of the disparities in 76104. Do you see that correlation a lot with the youth that you serve?
Yes.
Is those disparities?
100%. So those disparities start before birth even. If you look at infant mortality rates in our communities, it starts with the mother's health, and it starts and keeps on going through the life of the child. And we see it, you based on the zip code that you were born into, you have statistical predictability with certain things that are going to happen in your life. It's not inevitability, it's just predictability.
Isn't that crazy just to think? Mm-hmm. And the numbers are pretty, I hate to say not spot on, but it's like, wow, how can we get down to, because where you grew up, you kind of know the set of circumstances of the life that you may live, just simply the fact that you were born somewhere you had no control over.
That's right. Makes no difference. Wasn't my choice, wasn't your choice. It is why we need disruptors, though. It's why we need these that's why I believe Boys and Girls Club is a disruptor, a powerful, positive disruptor. It's the thing in a child's life that has the power to change their trajectory. It exposes them to new people, new resources, new ideas. I talk about me being a dreamer. It gives them the opportunity to say, I have a dream. I have, I want to become this or that, and then, actually be supported on their way to doing it.
Speaking of dreamers, one day there's going to be 1 million people that's listening to this episode. And so how would you tell them as individuals they can be disruptors?
Everybody can be a disruptor. It doesn't take a certain amount of money or time. It does take a decision, though. And so there's no minimum threshold required. It does require a decision to participate, though. So I was talking earlier about making the decision to say yes. And so there's lots of ways people can get involved. Volunteer your time. If time is what you have, then figure out a way to volunteer your time. If that's an hour a week, 2 hours a week, get educated. That's another way. Figure out and understand your community. Understand how things work in your community, understand where the resources are, and maybe get educated so you can understand how to vote even based on the things that you understand and believe in. And then I would also say, if you're able and you have the capability and capacity to do it, give. There are ways for you to contribute on the basis of what you believe in. And that's extremely important. I believe that giving is a representation of your beliefs. And then the other thing I would say is that there are ways for you to, if you're able to do it, like you, Ty, you serve in a capacity as a member of a board, and many boards actually. And I think there's a way to contribute even beyond, which is through leadership.
So now you've been at Boys and Girls Club for a while. So let's just say, 30 years from now, we're at your retirement party.
Oh, gosh.
And you're standing up in front
I'll
of
be really old then, if it's 30 years from now.
Well, that's we need you for another 30 more because you're going to stay motivated.
Yeah.
And you're standing up and people are giving speeches and you're giving a speech. How would you want people to remember you by or what would be your legacy?
She made a difference. Yeah, that's when I was 12 and said I wanted to change the world. It's this idea that I've changed the world in my corner of the world.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will let you know that if I could go back and talk to 12-year-old Daphne, I would tell her, you have changed the world. You have changed Tarrant County for the better and continue to change. And I can only look forward to seeing what Daphne 30 years from now, the impact that you'll make. And so I know we're coming short on time, but I just want to truly thank you for sitting down and having this conversation with me. It was really insightful. But before we leave, I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to tell everyone how they can get involved and support the work that you all are doing at Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tarrant County.
So you can find us everywhere using basically the first initial of all of our names. So here it is, BGCGTC. So Boys Girls Club, Greater Tarrant County. So it's at BGCGTC on all of our socials and our website, except it's .org at the end.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, as you mentioned, that's how you can get involved with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Tarrant County. Give your time, give your talents, and give your treasures. But Daphne, thank you again for joining me on Take This Down. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Ty.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Take This Down. You're going to want to continue to stay engaged because you never know who our next guest may be. We're available on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.